If you're over 60 and living with diabetes, standing in the produce aisle can feel like navigating a minefield. A fruit looks healthy, but you wonder, will this spike my blood sugar? Will that sweet snack undo my morning's careful choices? Let's unlock the truth so you can enjoy fruit without the guesswork. I'm Dr. Emily Carter. I've worked with older adults for more than 20 years, helping people balance medications, meals, mobility, and sometimes the worry that comes with both aging and diabetes. In my clinic, I've seen the confusion, well-meaning advice, scary headlines, and those supermarket labels that promise natural and healthy, but don't mention portion or context. Today, I'm going to give you 2 simple numbers that make fruit choices much easier. Then walk through 5 fruits that tend to raise blood sugar more quickly in older adults and 5 fruits that are generally safer choices. I'll also share practical strategies you can use at home. No extremes, no bans, just clear, evidence-minded steps you can try this week. If this video is helpful, please subscribe. I'll keep sharing calm, senior-focused guidance you can actually use. 2 numbers will guide almost every smart fruit decision you make: glycemic index and glycemic load. Think of the glycemic index, or GI, as speed. It tells you how quickly a food's carbohydrates tend to raise blood sugar. Imagine a speedometer. Some foods push the needle up fast, others creep along. Foods with a GI under about 55 are generally considered low. They raise blood sugar more slowly. Foods above that raise it faster. Glycemic load, or GL, is the second number. If GI is speed, GL is the size of the truck. It combines speed with how much carbohydrate is in a typical serving. A food can have a high GI but a low GL if the usual portion is small. For example, watermelon has a relatively high GI, meaning it releases sugar quickly, but a modest portion will have a low GL, so eaten carefully it may have less impact than you expect. As a practical guide, a GL under about 10 for a serving is considered low. These are rules of thumb, not laws. Ripeness, portion size, and what you eat with the fruit change the results. Now, with those 2 numbers in your pocket, let's talk about 5 fruits you should approach with caution. I don't call anything forbidden. What follows are common patterns I've seen in clinic and in the literature that suggest extra care, especially for people over 60. Bananas are everywhere and convenient, which makes them a common choice, but ripeness matters. A green banana has more resistant starch. As it ripens, that starch converts to sugar. A medium, ripe banana can have a GL around the mid-teens, roughly in the neighborhood of 15 for a typical medium fruit. That's above the low GL threshold and can push blood sugar up more than you might expect, especially when eaten alone between meals. The risk for older adults is twofold. Ripeness speeds absorption, and a whole banana is easy to eat quickly, leaving little room for portion mindfulness. Mitigation is simple. Choose a slightly less ripe banana if possible. Split a banana in half and have the other half later, or pair it with a handful of nuts or a spoon of peanut butter. Adding fat and protein slows gastric emptying and blunts the blood sugar rise. If you use a banana in a smoothie, remember blending makes sugars more available. Count that serving as if it were a concentrated portion. Pineapple. Pineapple tastes tropical and refreshing, but it's naturally higher in sugar and often served in large, chopped portions. The GI is moderate to high, and a typical serving of chunks can push the GL into double digits. Pineapple also appears frequently in fruit salads, skewers, or grilled desserts, where portions balloon and added syrups or glazes can add even more sugar. Another practical issue is that many people treat pineapple like a side dish rather than a component of a balanced plate. To reduce the impact, measure the portion. About a half cup of fresh pineapple is a reasonable starting point. Then pair it with cottage cheese or a small handful of almonds. Choosing pineapple as part of a meal rather than as a standalone snack will usually produce a gentler blood sugar response. Grapes. Grapes are a classic example of easy to overeat. Bite-sized, sweet, and portable, they disappear from a bowl before you realize it. A small cluster can be one serving, a couple handfuls can be several. On a per-serving basis, grapes have a moderate GI and a GL that can climb quickly with portion. The other trap is juice. Grape juice concentrates the sugar of many grapes into 1 cup. For older adults who may have a reduced insulin response, those repeated portions of bite-sized fruit can add up. One practical method is to pre-portion grapes into a small cup. About 15 grapes is a common approximate measure for a single serving, and to always eat them with a source of protein or fat, like cheese or plain Greek yogurt. Eating grapes with another food not only slows absorption, but also helps you notice fullness sooner. Papaya. Soft-textured fruits like papaya tempt people to eat more than a normal serving. Papaya's GL can be around the low double digits for a generous serving, depending on size and ripeness. Because the texture is forgiving, it's easy to have a bowl that exceeds a single serving. Another consideration: papaya is often blended into smoothies or served as a dessert base, further concentrating carbohydrate per eating occasion. To keep control, aim for a modest portion. Think about a half cup to a cup of chopped fruit and pair it with protein, such as a spoonful of ricotta or a sprinkle of chopped nuts. If you choose papaya in a blended form, reduce the total quantity you blend to match a reasonable single serving. Mango. Mango is one of the most flavor-packed fruits. It's also one of the sweetest. Typical serving sizes at restaurants or home can be generous, and a medium portion of mango often carries a GL in the mid-teens, especially when fully ripe. Sliced mango is often paired with sticky rice, sweetened yogurt, or sauces that add sugar. For older adults who may have slower insulin responses and less muscle mass to buffer glucose, a full plate of mango can be a heavy load. My practical advice is to treat mango as an occasional treat rather than a daily staple. Have a small portion, maybe a quarter to a third of a medium mango, paired with plain cottage cheese or a small handful of walnuts to slow digestion. If you make a salsa out of mango, balance it with lime, herbs, and plenty of non-starchy vegetables to stretch the volume without multiplying the sugar. As you hear these 5 fruits, you might be thinking, that's a lot of restrictions. I want to stress again, none of these fruits are universally off-limits. The issue is how they're prepared, how ripe they are, and what else is on your plate. Older bodies often respond differently to carbohydrates. After age 60, many people experience changes that affect blood sugar, reduced insulin sensitivity, loss of lean muscle mass which normally helps clear glucose, and sometimes medications that interact with diet. Those shifts don't mean you must eliminate favorite foods, but they do mean being a bit more intentional about portions and pairings. A short story from my clinic. A patient in her late 60s loved mango smoothies every morning. She'd add a whole mango, some juice and honey. She felt virtuous because it was fruit, but her fasting glucose and post-meal readings were higher than we'd like. We shifted just 2 things, half the mango, plain yogurt instead of juice, and a sprinkle of ground flaxseed, and her post-meal spikes eased. Small changes like that add up without making life joyless. Before moving on, a quick note on ripeness and preparation. Ripeness increases sugar availability. A riper fruit is sweeter and more likely to produce a faster blood sugar rise. Similarly, processing, blending, juicing, drying concentrates the sugar and raises the effective GL of that eating occasion. For older adults, these 2 realities often explain why the same fruit can be harmless one day and troublesome another. Now for a different list, fruits that tend to be gentler and behave well in older bodies when used thoughtfully. These are not magic bullets, but choices that, thanks to their fiber, lower GL per serving, or combination of fat and fiber, often lead to steadier blood sugar. Cherries. Cherries are one of my favorite examples because they combine low GI with a small serving GL. Sweet or tart cherries generally fall into a low GI range, around the 20s, and a typical handful has a GL in the single digits, often around 5 or 6. Their small size makes portion control easier. You can count a modest bowl and know you haven't overdone it. Cherries also contain polyphenols and antioxidants, which research suggests are associated with metabolic benefits, though that is an area where studies are ongoing and not conclusive for everyone. Practically, eat cherries whole rather than in syrup or canned form. A small bowl with a few almonds or a spoonful of Greek yogurt makes a satisfying low-GL snack. Strawberries. Strawberries are another reliable choice. They have a GI around the low 40s and a GL typically under 10 for a standard serving. Many estimates put a cup of strawberries in the low single digits for GL. They're high in fiber for their size and have a lot of water, so they fill you up without a large carbohydrate burden. Because strawberries are often eaten whole or sliced, they don't tempt the same overeating that bite-sized grapes do. A simple serving idea is to top plain yogurt with sliced strawberries and a few sunflower seeds. Avoid commercial fruit-on-the-bottom yogurts that add syrup or extra sugar. Those change the math quickly. Apples. Apples are classic, convenient, and when eaten with the skin, a solid choice. Typical GI estimates for apples are in the high 30s to around 40, and the GL for a medium apple is often in the mid-single digits. The skin carries most of the fiber, so leaving the peel on matters. The fiber slows digestion and leads to a steadier increase in blood sugar. Apples also combine well with protein or fat. Try an apple wedge with a thin slice of cheddar or a smear of almond butter. That combination turns a snack into a more balanced mini-meal and reduces the chance of a sharp spike. These safer fruits share characteristics: moderate to low GI, modest GL for a normal portion, and texture or composition that promotes satiety. That satiety helps older adults avoid the common pitfall of reaching for snacks soon after a fruit serving and inadvertently stacking carbohydrate loads. A few practical patterns come up across both lists. First, always be mindful of dried fruit and fruit juice. The drying process concentrates sugar. A small handful of raisins can equal several servings of fresh grapes. Fruit juice, even 100% juice, removes the fiber and concentrates the sugar. 1 cup of juice can equal 2 or 3 servings of fruit. For older adults managing blood sugar, those concentrated forms are where trouble often starts. Second, pairing matters. Protein or healthy fat eaten at the same time can blunt the blood sugar rise. A few examples: a small apple with cottage cheese, a few cherries with a spoonful of ricotta, half a banana with a tablespoon of peanut butter, or sliced avocado with a sprinkle of sea salt. These are simple swaps that don't require specialized foods. Third, portion awareness beats guilt. It's helpful to measure or eyeball standard servings until you internalize them. Half a banana rather than a whole one, a small bowl of pineapple instead of a heaping plate, pre-portioned grapes. These are practical gestures that maintain pleasure without creating blood sugar volatility. Let's pause briefly on a trickier case I mentioned earlier: watermelon. On a GI chart, watermelon often sits relatively high, meaning it releases sugar fast. But because a typical single serving is mostly water, the GL for a carefully measured portion is low. The problem in real life is portion creep. It's easy to eat large bowls of watermelon on a hot day. For older adults, the strategy is straightforward. Enjoy watermelon in a small measured portion and pair it with a protein source, or choose it as part of a meal rather than the whole meal. The practical takeaway is that context and portion size frequently determine whether a given fruit is a friend or an occasional indulgence. Now, before we continue to the remainder of the fruits that tend to support steadier blood sugar, I want to give you a few short rules I ask my patients to try for a month. Not to be rigid. These are experiments you can test and adjust with your healthcare team. First, whenever possible, eat fruit with a protein or healthy fat. Second, measure a serving for 2 weeks. Notice how much you're actually putting on your plate. Third, prefer whole fruit over juice and fresh over dried when you're concerned about blood sugar. And finally, be wary of overripe fruit for snacks. Save very ripe fruit for a dessert portion after a balanced meal. One more practical habit. When a craving hits, ask yourself if you want the fruit for taste or for fullness. If it's taste, say you want something sweet. Try a small portion of a lower GL fruit like cherries or strawberries paired with a spoonful of Greek yogurt. If it's fullness, choose a whole fruit with the skin on and pair it with protein so it satisfies longer. In the next section, I'll walk through the remaining supportive fruits and give you exact serving ideas you can replicate today. Simple swaps and one-week challenges that have helped many of my patients lower post-meal spikes without feeling deprived. But before we go on, take a moment to think of one fruit you find hard to resist. Picture the last time you had it. What else was on the plate? How ripe was it? Could you try splitting it, pairing it with protein, or reducing the portion next time? If you have a fruit in mind, that will make the next tips far more practical, because I'm about to offer exact swaps, small changes that are easy to test. We'll cover avocado and pear closely, two fruits that surprise people with how helpful they can be for blood sugar control, plus one unexpected idea for handling high-sugar favorites. And I'll share a short, realistic plan you can try this week. One swap for 7 days. Track how you feel, then reassess with your healthcare team. Before I close this section, I want to remind you of two important facts. First, research published in nutrition and diabetes journals suggests these patterns, GI, GL, ripeness and preparation, matter for post-meal glucose response, especially in older adults. Second, every person is different. These are practical starting points grounded in clinical experience and the literature, not guarantees. Talk with your healthcare team about how these ideas fit with your medications, activity level, and overall health plan. When you're ready, we'll move into the rest of the best fruits, practical swaps you can try this week, and a short, doable plan to test one small change. One habit can often reduce spikes without making your life joyless. If you're ready, let's continue. I'll show you how to make that swap, what portion sizes to aim for, and two specific meal pairings that work well for older bodies. And if this advice is useful, share it with a family member, caregiver, or friend who might benefit. Sometimes a partner in change makes all the difference. If you pictured a fruit in your hand a moment ago, hold that image, because the rest of this video is practical, not theoretical. Let's finish with the remaining supportive fruits, exact swaps you can try. Two meal pairings that work well for older bodies. A simple 7-day experiment you can do at home, and a concise mindset to carry forward. Avocado is one of those foods that surprises people. It's not usually thought of as fruit in the same sugary way as mango or pineapple, and that difference matters. Avocado has a very low glycemic index, often well under 15, and the glycemic load for a typical serving is effectively negligible. Why does that help? Because avocados are mostly fat and fiber rather than carbohydrate. That combination slows digestion, increases satiety, and blunts the speed at which sugar appears in the bloodstream. For older adults who may experience slower insulin responses, that slowdown is useful. Practical ways to use avocado. Aim for about 1/4 to 1/2 of a medium avocado per serving if you're watching calories, or up to half an avocado paired with protein if you need more sustenance. Spread half an avocado on a slice of whole grain toast with a poached egg. Toss avocado cubes into a salad with grilled chicken and a sprinkle of lemon. Or blend a small piece into a smoothie for creaminess without a big carbohydrate hit. Remember that avocado is calorie-dense, so pair size with your overall meal plan. The core idea is simple. Add fat and fiber from avocado to temper carbohydrate impact from other parts of the plate. Pears are another pleasantly reliable choice. A medium pear typically has a GI in the high 30s and a GL in the mid-single digits when eaten whole. Like apples, much of their benefit comes from fiber and the intact skin, so eat pears with the skin on whenever possible. Pears have a mellow sweetness that often satisfies a sweet craving without prompting further snacking. Try a small pear sliced with a couple slices of cheese, or poach a pear lightly and serve it as a dessert alongside a tablespoon of ricotta. A pear's texture also helps. Chewing and volume contribute to fullness, which helps older adults avoid grazing and stacking carbohydrates throughout the day. At this point, you might be wondering about exact swaps. How do you move from a fruit that tends to spike glucose to one that keeps things steadier while still preserving pleasure? Here are a few practical swaps you can test this week. If you usually reach for a mango at snack time, try a small bowl of cherries instead. A quarter to a third of a mango often carries a GL in the mid-teens, whereas a small handful of cherries usually sits in the single digits for GL. Cherries give you sweetness and mouthfeel without the same sugar load. If a banana smoothie is your morning ritual, try half the banana blended with plain Greek yogurt and a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, or replace the banana with a small handful of strawberries to lower the GL further. The protein and fat from yogurt and flaxseed slow absorption and make the smoothie more filling. If you habitually pour a glass of fruit juice with breakfast, consider swapping to a cup of whole berries or a small apple paired with a hard-boiled egg. Juice concentrates sugar and removes fiber. Whole fruit preserves fiber and gives you chewing satisfaction. If pineapple is a favorite for desserts, reduce the portion to about a half cup and make it the finishing touch on a bowl of plain cottage cheese with a sprinkle of chopped walnuts. The dairy protein and healthy fat alter the eating occasion from a concentrated sugar load into a balanced mini meal. If you love grapes by the bowlful, pre-portion about 15 grapes into a small cup and eat them with a few slices of low-fat cheese. Counting a serving ahead of time makes a big behavioral difference. Small swaps like these are the heart of practical change, low friction, easy to test, and respectful of pleasure. You don't have to eliminate favorites. You simply change how and when you enjoy them. 2 meal pairings I recommend often in clinic because they're easy, satisfying, and gentle on blood sugar. A breakfast pairing and a light lunch. For breakfast, plain Greek yogurt, about 3/4 cup, topped with 1 cup of sliced strawberries and a tablespoon of chia or ground flaxseed. The yogurt adds protein, the berries add flavor and fiber with a low GL, and the seeds add omega-3s and more fiber. For lunch, a mixed greens salad with 1/3 of a medium avocado, 1 small apple sliced thinly, 3 to 4 ounces of grilled salmon or chicken, and a vinaigrette made with olive oil and lemon. The vegetable volume, protein and healthy fat turn a modest amount of fruit into part of a balanced meal, rather than a concentrated sugar source. Let's talk portion numbers in practical terms because the math matters. Here are typical serving sizes to keep in mind. About 15 grapes is 1 serving. Half a medium banana is a reasonable snack portion for many people. A cup of strawberries or a cup of melon counts as 1 serving, but be mindful of melon portion size because of its high GI if you eat large bowls. 1 small apple or pear is a standard serving. A half cup of chopped pineapple or papaya is a moderate portion. About 5 to 6 cherries. Make a modest snack-sized handful. 1/4 to 1/3 of a medium mango is a small portion. Half an avocado is a generous serving of healthy fat. These are practical anchors you can use when you measure or eyeball your plate. A short, realistic 7-day experiment many of my patients have tried looks like this. 1 small change, consistently applied, then reassess with how you feel and with your care team. Day 1-7. Choose 1 habit to alter. For example, swap whole mango for a small bowl of cherries at snack time, or replace your morning glass of juice with a cup of mixed berries plus a tablespoon of plain yogurt. Each day, pay attention to two things: how satisfied you feel after the snack or meal, and any symptoms you notice. Energy levels, mid-morning hunger, how you feel after walking. Keep a simple note each evening: what you ate, how full you felt, and one word on energy or symptoms. You're not collecting data for research, you're building personal feedback. After 7 days, review the pattern. Did the swap reduce cravings later in the day? Did you feel more satisfied? These subjective cues matter. If you're tracking glucose as part of a care plan, bring your observations to your next appointment and discuss what you noticed. If you're not sure what to change next, take another 7-day experiment with a different swap. Maybe focus on portion control for grapes or choosing less ripe bananas when you want one. Now, I want to give you some practical recipes and serving ideas that are ready to use. No fuss, accessible ingredients, and meant for older adults balancing energy needs with blood sugar goals. Savory berry breakfast. Mix 3/4 cup plain cottage cheese with 1-2 cup sliced strawberries, a tablespoon of chopped walnuts, and a dusting of cinnamon. This provides protein, a modest amount of fruit, and healthy fat to steady glucose. Apple and nut plate. Slice 1 small apple with skin. Pair it with 1 tablespoon of almond butter and a small handful, about 10 to 12, of raw almonds or a 1-ounce piece of cheese. Eat slowly and notice fullness. Avocado toast with a twist. Mash 1/4 to 1/3 of an avocado with lemon and pepper, spread on a thin slice of whole grain toast, and top with a soft-boiled egg or smoked salmon. This is a balanced breakfast with very low GL from the avocado and sustained protein. Tropical light. If you crave pineapple or mango, measure a 1/2 cup of fresh pineapple or 1/3 of a mango and fold it into a salad made with mixed greens, grilled chicken, and a tablespoon of toasted coconut for texture. Serve as part of a lunch, so the fruit is embedded in a meal, not an isolated sweet. Chopped fruit bowl for mindful snacking. Pre-portion a 1/2 cup of mixed cherries and berries into small containers and keep them in the fridge for grab-and-go snacks. Pair each container with a small packet of plain nuts or a single-serve cheese wedge. These recipes are designed to maintain enjoyment while moderating the sugar load and increasing satiety, so you're less tempted to snack repeatedly. There are common traps I see repeatedly, and it's worth stating them clearly so you can avoid wasted effort and frustration. First, fruit juice. Even 100% fruit juice concentrates carbohydrate and removes fiber. A small cup can equal 2 or 3 servings of whole fruit. Consider juice to be an occasional item rather than a daily drink, and if you choose it, reduce other carbohydrate sources at that meal. Second, dried fruit. Raisins, dates, and dried cranberries are small but dense. A tablespoon of raisins can be the sugar equivalent of a 1/4 cup of grapes. If you include dried fruit, keep the portion tiny and always pair it with protein. Third, smoothies and blended fruit. Blending breaks down fiber and makes sugar more available. If you enjoy smoothies, use half the fruit you would eat whole, add a protein, Greek yogurt, silken tofu, or protein powder, and a fat source, a tablespoon of nut butter or flaxseed, to slow absorption. Fourth, very ripe fruit. Ripeness converts starches to sugars, raising GI. If you're managing blood sugar, choose fruit that's ripe but not overly soft, or plan ripe fruit for dessert after a balanced meal rather than a mid-afternoon snack. Fifth, added sugars and toppings. Sweetened yogurts, fruit in syrup, jams, and sweet sauces turn a harmless portion into a high GL event. Read labels and prefer plain preparations. A tricky question I get often: what about watermelon? I'll restate this because it's a useful nuance. Watermelon's GI is relatively high, indicating sugar comes into the bloodstream quickly, but its GL for a small measured portion is low because it's mostly water. The practical risk is overeating. On a hot day, you can eat a large bowl, and suddenly your GL is no longer low. The strategy: treat watermelon as you would dessert. Small portion or pair it with protein, or use a few chunks as one component of a mixed salad. Context and portion control make watermelon a reasonable choice occasionally. Another nuance worth discussing is how aging changes the math. After age 60, many people experience a decline in insulin sensitivity and a loss of lean muscle mass. Muscle tissue plays an important role in clearing glucose after meals, so less muscle can mean glucose lingers in the bloodstream longer. That doesn't mean fruit must be avoided. It means pairing fruit with protein, favoring lower GL options, and maintaining or building muscle through resistance activities with medical clearance. Even gentle resistance work, bodyweight exercises, bands, or light weights can help preserve muscle over time. Discuss exercise plans with your provider, but know that combining small dietary changes with physical activity is one of the most effective ways to influence post-meal glucose. Let's dispel a few common myths so you can make decisions without confusion. Some labels or headlines suggest that antioxidants or enzymes like bromelain and papain can neutralize sugar. Research does not support the idea that these compounds remove or cancel the carbohydrate impact of fruit. They may offer other health effects, but they don't change the GI or GL of a serving. Likewise, natural sweetener or raw labels do not automatically mean low glycemic impact. The basic chemistry of carbohydrate, fiber, fat, and portion size still determines blood sugar response. If you live with diabetes and are on medications, it's important to understand how changes to your eating patterns interact with treatment. I don't advise altering medications on your own. If you plan to make consistent changes, larger or smaller portions, different timing, or new patterns of exercise, talk with your healthcare team. They'll help you understand whether medication adjustments or increased monitoring are appropriate. Your clinician can also help interpret any home glucose data you collect during a 7-day experiment, so changes are safe and useful. Now for a short mindset shift that I ask many patients to try. Move from allowed or forbidden thinking to informed and intentional thinking. Instead of asking, "Can I eat this?" ask, "How can I include this so it fits my goals today?" The first question triggers anxiety and avoidance. The second invites creativity and control. Informed choices often create small wins, like splitting a banana and adding a tablespoon of nut butter, or replacing a glass of juice with a cup of mixed berries and a boiled egg. Those small wins build confidence and create sustainable habits. I want to leave you with 3 simple rules to use every time you face a fruit choice. Keep these in your pocket. 1. Ask what else is on your plate. If the fruit is part of a balanced meal with protein and fat, it behaves differently than when it's an isolated snack. Whenever possible, eat fruit with protein or healthy fat. 2. Measure once and then eyeball. Use measuring cups or a scale for a few days to learn standard servings. After that, you'll be able to estimate portions without thinking about it too much. 3. Respect ripeness and preparation. Less ripe fruit tends to have lower glycemic impact. Blending, juicing, drying, and adding sugar increase it. Choose whole, fresh fruit over processed forms when blood sugar control is a priority. Before I close, a brief clinical note from my practice. I once worked with a man in his 70s who loved dried fruit and trail mix as his afternoon pick-me-up. The mix felt nourishing to him, and he'd been told by family that dried fruit was natural and therefore harmless. After we simply separated the components, he began eating a small measured portion of fresh fruit with plain yogurt and a tiny handful of nuts instead of the trail mix. He reported feeling less hungry in the evening and more energetic on his afternoon walks. This wasn't a medical miracle. It was a change in pattern: lower concentrated sugar, more protein, more satisfaction, fewer follow-up snacks. Small, repeated choices like that are what produce real differences in daily life. So what should you remember from everything we've covered? First, fruit is not an enemy. It offers vitamins, fiber, and pleasure. Second, two numbers, GI, think speed, and GL, think load, help guide smarter choices. Low GI is generally under about 55. Low GL for a serving is generally under about 10. Third, 5 fruits often deserve extra caution because of ripeness, portion size, or how they're commonly eaten: banana, pineapple, grapes, papaya, and mango. 5 fruits are usually easier on blood sugar: cherries, strawberries, apples, avocado, and pears. Fourth, practical habits: pairing fruit with protein or fat, watching portion sizes, preferring whole fruit over juice or dried fruit, and choosing less ripe fruit are powerful and sustainable. One final simple action you can take right now. Pick one fruit-related swap from this video and commit to trying it for 7 days. Keep a short note each day about how you felt after the snack or meal. After a week, reflect on whether it helped with energy, fullness, or cravings. Bring your observations to your next healthcare visit and ask how these changes fit with your medication plan. If this guidance feels useful, please share it with a spouse, friend, or caregiver, someone who helps you shop or prepare meals. Talking through one small change with another person often makes it easier to follow through. And please subscribe for more calm, senior-focused, evidence-minded guidance. I'll keep bringing practical tips you can actually use. Above all, be kind to yourself. Managing diabetes after 60 is about steady, informed choices, not perfection. Small changes add up, and you don't have to do them all at once. Talk with your healthcare team about how these ideas apply to your specific situation, and choose one reasonable step to start this week.